Feeling overwhelmed by a chronic diagnosis? Don't let it define you. Join me and learn how you can take control of your treatment, improve your quality of life, and empower your diagnosis. Together, we can beat this. Each week, I'll share a different topic and a free download so you can fast-track your pathway to beat a diagnosis. I'm Conrad Bly. I've beaten death twice. Now it's your turn. Welcome back. In the Find Your Chronic Diagnosis Quickly episode, I asked you to fill in the one short step questionnaire in the free guide accompanying the episode. The intent of that process was for you to understand that your symptoms and signs were not just a random set of circumstances, but a collection called a syndrome. Right now, I'm sincerely hoping you went to the GP and discussed your syndrome, and that became a diagnosis. Or not. If you haven't spoken to your GP yet, that's okay, but I suggest you go back to the episode or pick up the phone and get tested. If you've been diagnosed with something, stay with me and we'll crack on with your pathway. In this episode, I'm going to help you go from feeling rather negative and lost about your current situation to feeling positive and determined to embark on a pathway to empower a diagnosis. We'll talk about the emotions of being given a diagnosis in future episodes, but for now, we're going to focus on what it means to be empowered. So let's first look at what an empowered diagnosis is, and then we'll break that down a little further. And like always, there's a free download to help you move from a state of feeling rather lost and overwhelmed to being in charge and motivated to do something about your diagnosis. An empowered diagnosis involves you being actively involved in your treatment. It gives you increased choice and allows you to gain access to health information. As a result of the work you put into your diagnosis, you'll feel listened to and better understood by your healthcare providers. When I applied the Trinity Pathway to my severe heart disease, I was amazed at how my medical team turned on and started helping. I went from being a patient to being a hero, and my medical team went from being practitioners to being coaches. The transformation was unbelievable. My medical team didn't just listen, they became actively engaged and proactive about my treatment. The shoes reversed and suddenly they were on a team and going over and above simply because I was empowered by my diagnosis. Think of someone you know who has defied the odds and beaten their diagnosis. Often you'll find them in people with cancer, and I've met others like me with heart disease who turned the odds in their favour. You know the sort. They're the ones who survive their diagnosis or at least prolong the inevitable by far more than anyone thought possible. These people might seem like superheroes, but they're not. They're just like you and me. The difference is they empowered their diagnosis. They empowered their diagnosis by empowering themselves, and that's where you and I are going to roll our sleeves up and get started on your diagnosis pathway. What I'd like you to do now is follow the link in the notes below, and I'll give you a free copy of the Empowering My Diagnosis Now cheat sheet. The questions in the cheat sheet are designed for you to consider your current relationship with your diagnosis and re-pivot towards one of positive and determined action to beat a diagnosis. I won't lie, becoming empowered does take work. So let's have a look. Question 1 is about being self-aware and practicing self-care. We start here because one of the biggest problems is recognizing we have a problem in the first place. Once we understand we have a problem, we then have the capacity to do something about it. The focus of this question is about listening to ourselves, because the consequences for those of us with chronic conditions can actually be catastrophic if we don't. I lost my self-awareness recently and it nearly killed me. Seriously, you can see what happened in the "What happens when life gets in the way" episode. Question 2 is about positive self-talk and positive attitudes. The need for that stems around the fact we all have inner critics, and they don't want us to succeed. Inner critics are so difficult to deal with. Mine's called Charlie. Charlie only sees the negative, the downside, the poor outcome. You won't beat a diagnosis if you pop pills and feel sorry for yourself, thinking there is nothing you can do. Question 3 sets intentions around being assertive and trusting yourself. This question is not about being a pain in the backside to your medical team, but it's about taking control, because you have to take control of the situation if you want to beat your diagnosis. If you don't take control, who will? Question 4 is about continuously learning about yourself, your treatment, and your condition. Beating a diagnosis is not a one-size-fits-all scenario, and our medical team deals with a number of patients every day with the same conditions as you, but we're all different, and we need to find out how our collective environment of us interacts with our condition. And finally, question 5 requires us to stay motivated. It is hard to stay motivated, especially when something doesn't work out quite right. But being motivated about beating our diagnosis is the only way to stay on track and keep forging forward, because in the end, if we don't keep motivated, no one else will. So there you have it, the 5 questions you'll find on the Empowering My Diagnosis Now cheat sheet. With those questions, you'll have a set of affirmations you can keep reflecting back on when times get tough, because believe me, they will. But if you remain empowered as you travel along your diagnosis pathway, you're highly likely to find a fulfilling life along the way. I'm Conrad Bly. I've beaten death twice. Now it's your turn.